AICCU Ed, COBTE, and CAPC TED. So I'm going to turn it, so I'm officially welcoming all of you. And I'm going to take a breath. I would really invite you all to take a moment to take a deep breath also. So let's do that together, whether you're online or here with me. So let's just take a deep breath.
No, it's from right here. Yes.
And we're actually going to have some structured breathing at the beginning of the keynote as well. But I think that it's been a lot of Russian transition this morning. We've been running a little bit behind for each of our sessions because that's the nature of a hybrid world. But I think the other part of the nature of the hybrid world is remembering that when we're humanizing one another, we need to give a little grace and space for when we start things a little bit late, because we are going to have important conversations, but we want you to be present. So welcome. I'm going to welcome Eduardo Munoz, who is the current president of COBTE, and he will be introducing our very, very esteemed guest for this session. And I will see you all at the main session at 1 p.m. as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bettina. So I'm Eduardo Munoz, and I'm with San Jose State, but I'm also the current president of the California Association for Bilingual Teacher Educators. And for me, it's a real pleasure to be together with you all in this joint session. I also want to give a special recognition to Alison Smith from AICCU. Round of applause for her. And also for the president of CAPC TED, Nat Hansubada, who's also participating in the organization of today. I think it's a great moment when we get to connect with people from the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce David DeGreer, who is the director of the professional services team, someone who came to this position about a year and a half ago, but with whom I've had the pleasure of collaborating in one of the achievements that we have attained in the past year and a half, which is the new bilingual authorization standards. During that time, it's been a pleasure to see how they have actually managed to bring together different interests, different perspectives on how that was going to happen with stakeholders in the field. And we came to a happy resolution that really brought all that participated to a very good place. And I think that's also merit to be paid and respect to be paid to David, to Miranda, Yored, Alison, a number of people that participated in that. So without any other words, please let's all welcome David to the podium.
And this is really a team effort. This is not me doing it. And so I'd like to introduce my colleagues who are here with me. So first of all, we have Aaron Sullivan, who's an administrator in our division. Renee Marshall, who's our newest administrator for early childhood education. Kara Mendoza for grants. I think everyone here probably knows Miranda Gutierrez. Heather Kennedy is one of our performance assessment consultants, as is behind her Zoltan Sarda. William Hattrick was presenting before. Michelle Williams-George is another one of our accreditation consultants, as is Tim Weeks. And Administrator Cheryl Hickey. Our Deputy Chief Director, Amy Rising. And of course, our Executive Director, Dr. Mary Bixie Sandy. So we have a number of things to talk with you about based on the questions that we received. And the first one is going to be the Education Specialist TPAs. So I'm going to turn that over to Amy.
All right, so many of you were just in the Ed Specialist room, so this is going to feel very familiar, but it's always good to review, right? So we have the same structure for the Ed Specialist TPA. It is brand new and first required this fall. We've went through a year of pilot testing, year of field testing, and here we are. So we have 4 steps: plan, teach and assess. No. Oh, okay. Reflect, practice, and apply what you learned in their jobs. Don't. So for MMSN candidates in cycle 1, similar kind of format. They're going to work with a caseload of students. They're going to select 3 focus students, an English learner, 1 receiving related services, and a 3rd who has experienced some sort of inside school or outside of school trauma. We're going to plan a grade level lesson in literacy or math. That's a choice point for the candidate. They're going to film and record that teaching of that lesson with those children and students, and then reflect on that lesson and that planning, and then apply that. So should be feeling familiar to anyone who's been involved with gen ed work. On the ESN side, similar approach, caseload of students, 3 focus students, English learner, receiving related services, some sort of inside or outside of school trauma that the child or student has experienced. And then again, 1 lesson, again, literacy or math. They're going to record that, reflect on that work. What did the student learn and or experience, the child? What did the teacher learn and experience? How am I going to put all that together and apply it to the next instruction for those students? So that's cycle 1. In cycle 2, similar approach. We're looking at assessment now. How do we assess students? Again, for MMSN, caseload of students, grade level specific learning. If you did literacy in cycle 1, you'll do mathematics in cycle 2, or vice versa. Again, recording the series of lessons and assessments now, and then a review of that work, and then a reteaching or an extension if in fact the students did not understand or need further support. Similar for ESN, caseload of students, again, content-specific learning, recording that, reflecting on that, and then applying the learning. And the rubrics are slightly different for each type of assessment, again, because what we expect from our extensive support needs students is slightly different than for MMSN. And we invite you to look closely at that and get in touch if you need support. Passing standards were set for this initial operational year by the commission this past summer. So for cycle 1, for our mild to moderate candidates, they need to reach a score of 17 with 1 score of 1 allowed on a rubric. For cycle 2, it's 19. For ESN, it was slightly lower, so 15 for cycle 1, passing score of 17 on cycle 2. They can get as many ones as lets them get up to 15 or 17. So that side condition, it's called, was not applied at this time for our ESN candidates. So the commission was very intrigued by this work. We had a great presentation in June. These standards were brought forward and they were set for this first operational year. And we will move forward with these passing standards for the next 2 years, and then we'll revisit and bring it back to the commission for their deliberation. But I can tell you, coming out of the field test, we were incredibly impressed with the level of quality of our education specialists that participated in the field test. They did an outstanding job. So thank you to all of you who are in the field test. Lots of ways for you to get in touch with us at the commission. So we have our news email listserv that you can sign up for. And we have our updates that you can come along and talk to us about and be engaged. We do office hours on Friday mornings at 10. You can call in. This is every single week. You can talk to a real person at the commission who knows about the assessment you're calling us about, and we'll get you answers right away. And then we also have a coordinator contact list and things like that, so that you amongst yourselves can kind of build your community of learners. So we're very excited that we're launching this work and look forward to being with you. And I'm going to turn it back to David. So you know there are multiple approved performance assessments in California. So we have our Cal TPA work and our Cal APA work and our new ed specialist Cal TPA work and our coming along formative assessment for our preschool teachers. But others and anyone in the state of California can come forward with a performance assessment and get it approved by the commission. And so David is here to talk to you about Ed TPA, which is our other approved model. David.
So the commission approved the Ed TPA Special Education Handbook for California at their August meeting. And just last week, they set the initial passing standard, which is 37. And this assessment is good for both mild to moderate and extensive support needs. Because the field task group only had 19 portfolios to score, the commission requested that the model sponsor, Scale, conduct a new standard setting study next spring based on additional data, and then report to the commission in time for their June meeting regarding a possible updated standard that they're going to recommend. So this is the initial passing standard of 37. The commission also did reserve the right to adjust this initial passing standard if the additional data warrant that. So more information to come in the spring. Then we're also going to talk about candidate TPA support or Cal TPA candidate support. And I'm going to turn that over to Zoltan.
Good morning. It's good to see you all here. We're CTC, we're a bit on a mission of communicating some things that we're hearing from the field. I actually have the privilege of monitoring the Cal TPA Gen Ed email that comes in, and as well as hosting office hours for candidates and programs. And we get a lot of data about the Cal TPA, what's happening with candidates and with programs and questions that are out there. One of the things that's still lingering in the field that we just want to really draw our attention to is that there is still a perception that with the TPA that candidates have to do it on their own. We hear it from candidates at times. We hear it from programs at times that there's a question, how much support can I give? And so we just want to remind that this is really, teaching is a collaborative profession, and the TPAs are modeled after that sort of collaboration and support and formative experiences for candidates. So again, in the program guide, there's lots of acceptable supports or required support. So we have those. We see the next slide. Again, this is all familiar to, I assume everybody sitting here.
You control it.
Oh, I control it. Okay, there we go. Again, there's required supports, a list of required supports. But we also have, really providing appropriate settings, really thinking about formative experiences for candidates. Basically, the acceptable supports fall under the candidates have to do their own original work, but they can be highly supported in this work. And so, again, just reviewing with all faculty so that there is a common understanding across the field that candidates really can and should be supported in that collaborative process around this. So again, this is something that we're hearing on a fairly regular basis from both programs and from candidates. And so we're just wanting to get that out, that information out, and remind us all of that. We've also had some questions about condition codes. So yes. So I think one of the keys here is setting up situations where peers are looking at, candidates are looking at one another's submissions. But those questioning of, is this evidence for this construct, and how strong is that evidence? And then having, again, I actually think that those peer collaborations are really effective with them acting as assessors for each other for different components of them. So I think the idea is providing them the opportunities where they are really analyzing, based on the rubrics, based on the questions, looking at that concept of, is there evidence for each of these things? It's almost like a checklist going back and forth. Facilitating that kind of work with them, I think, is useful. I think the formative experiences in their coursework, or where they are, coursework, they're all doing planning, they're teaching, assessing, they're reflecting, and they're applying. And so having assignments that mimic that, I think, is where there is just a really strong approach. So crafting lessons collaboratively with them that they're going to be using in their settings, I think is, and looking at the requirements of the TPA. I think those are good practices as well. But I think when it comes down to, you should change this to this piece, that's a little bit too directive. But again, over the course of the year or 2 years that they're in the program, they're going to have lots of these formative experiences that are going to guide them to thinking about what is effective practice, what are evidence-based strategies and practices that we want to tap into, and how can we pull those into our work in general, and how can we pull those into our TPA work? Is that, it's a good question, because it is, it is that place of where do we hold back from saying you should do this piece. Mhm. Yep. Mhm. Yep.
Here's the score you would get, or I would pass you.
Yeah.
And tell them this.
Right. Yeah.
Encouraging them to look at other content, to think about expanding in other areas.
Mhm. Yeah. And one of the things we do in office hours is we'll talk about what is the intent of some component of the TPA. And then the candidates will tell us, well, I'm thinking about X. We don't say, is this right? That's a good way to do it. But what we ask is, what's your rationale? Why do you think that would be the appropriate thing for your students? And then they often talk out loud their rationale for doing that. And that's, we haven't told them anything, but we've guided them to that idea of, what are you doing and why are you doing it, which is what the TPA is all about. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thanks for that question. Okay. So again, going back to condition codes, we got a lot of questions around what's the purpose of the condition codes. Again, it's really a piece for being able to provide the most accurate score for a candidate. So a condition code is designed for if there is something missing or that can't be accessed by an assessor, it's really that, a candidate is in a lesser position of receiving a score if there are pieces of their submission that are inaccessible or unclear. And so again, they really fall under these categories of that there's content issues. Sometimes candidates submit for the wrong CalTPA for their content area. The standards are not there. So it's hard to assess a candidate's plan and their teaching and their assessing of students if we don't know what the standards are that they are referring to. Also, there's a lot of times when submission comes in, we can't see the video, we can't hear it, it's unclear. There's not clear if there's enough students that they're working with. And then sometimes there's missing documents. And I wanted to just, so we're seeing, these are the common ones that are coming up this year. These are the ones for the last year that have been dominant here. So missing ELD standards and missing ELD learning goals, they're accounting for 35% of condition codes for candidates. And this is one of the things that we're seeing is that candidates either leave them off, they don't include them at all, or they won't have a learning goal that's associated to with a standard, or their common thing is that they're using ELA standards instead of ELD standards. And so again, it seems to me that this is one of those areas for the field in terms of supporting candidates to really help them understand what's the difference between the ELD standards and what's the difference between the ELA, and then how do you cite those appropriately. The next highest condition code is for missing student work in cycle 2. So 15% of those, they're missing one or more of the student work samples. One of the things that we have done this year for year 5 is we have included pretty direct instructions on how to cite an ELD standard, even saying go to chapter 3 in this book and here's how you write it out. I will say that in our working with our assessors, what we have said to them is if it doesn't come in looking exactly like this, score it. If it's clear that the candidate accessed the correct document, the correct ELD standard document, even if it's a partial standard or if it's not written exactly in this form, score it. Because that's actually the key here, is that we want them to know the difference between an ELA standard and an ELD standard, because they're just, they're written very differently and there's different intents in how, and we want them to understand that's part of their accreditation. So, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, online folks. Okay, I'm repeating again.
Okay.
For those that are in the previous slide about most of the condition codes, ELD standards, goals not stated correctly or not even there, is that primarily from the cycle 1 candidates? Just want to clarify.
I would say that yes, it's more prevalent with cycle 1. However, we do see candidates who will, in their context for learning, they will name that they have English learners in their setting, and then they don't have a standard or goal for them. So we do see that, but yes, because it's required, and it's hard to see these come in because it's really, many of them have made the effort. They're just looking at the wrong document, which is, I think this is the reason that we put this whole portion in here that gives them pretty direct instruction on how to do that. But we're hoping that it progresses. And again, submissions that come in at this time of year, some of them are using the old templates still. They haven't sort of gotten into the year 5 templates. And so we're really hoping that this more, direct advice in the guide is going to lower that, but also for programs to make sure that we're supporting them in understanding the difference between ELD and ELA. Also, if they're using for cycle 1, they can use their own lesson plan. So I think sometimes programs provide lesson plans and they don't always call out the ELD standards. So making sure that if they're using their own lesson plan, making sure that it aligns with the requirements of the Cal TPA. Okay. And with that, who's next? All right, Heather.
So I'll be talking to you today about the new literacy performance assessment that will be coming online in 2025. So at our October commission meeting, the commission approved the proposed adoption of the literacy standards and teaching performance expectations that were prescribed by SB 488. And we have started our design team process. The application opened September 2nd and closed October 7th. And we're currently working on reviewing the applications for design team members, and we'll be working on appointing those members to work with our performance assessment team and with evaluation systems group of Pearson in order to design and develop the literacy performance assessment. In SB 488, it does outline that at least a third of our design team must be current teachers with primary grade literacy experience. So we will make sure that we are meeting that requirement with our design team. And we had a number of applicants who meet that requirement. So it's very exciting news for us. The performance assessment, according to SB 488, must assess competence in teaching foundational reading skills. We also have to align to specific sections in Ed Code that outline expectations, including that we have to align with the current ELA/ELD framework that is adopted by the State Board of Education. And we have to meet the assessment design standards for teaching performance assessments. And until the new assessment is adopted by the commission for approval, candidates must continue to take and pass the reading instruction competence assessment, which is the RECA. And this applies to multiple subject education specialist and PK3 specialist instruction credentials, which that credential was adopted last week as well, and you'll get more on that later. Something that is important to note is that we are still continuing to work on the standard and the TPEs for our low incidence areas. So for early childhood special education, deaf and hard of hearing, and visual impairment. So those have not yet been proposed, and we are continuing to develop those. We do have a proposed timeline here for our literacy performance assessment. So on October 13th, that is when our standards and TPEs were adopted for multiple subject, single subject, for mild to moderate support needs and extensive support needs, and for PK3 ECE specialist instruction. We plan on having some internal commission staff training and development of a technical assistance plan to assist programs. We're continuing our development of our TPEs for our low incidence special education areas. Then in winter of 2022, we are going to start our design team work and propose the adoption of the program standards for our low incidence special education areas. In 2022 through 2024, we'll work on technical assistance to programs to meet the updated literacy program standard that was adopted and the TPEs. And we have plans to do regional workshops, webinars, and office hours. And then as we move forward into 2023 and 2024, we will move into our pilot test. By July 1st, 2024 is when all programs must be aligned to the new literacy program standard and TPEs. In 24-25 is when we will complete our field test. And then by July 1st, 2025 is when the new performance assessment must be operational. And this is all outlined in SB 488. And now I'll go ahead and turn it over to Miranda for bilingual authorization.
So just a couple of updates on the bilingual authorization. We are planning to host a technical assistance next month on November 15th, and we're thankful and appreciative for the collaboration with our colleagues at COBTE. You'll be able to find information about that in the PSD e-news, which will come out tomorrow. Within that, there will be a link for folks to fill out in case there are questions they have or they want specific topics addressed during the technical assistance. We're going to try to get in front of those and front load those in front of our presentation for you. And then we can talk about any next steps or additional technical assistance, office hours that might be necessary. As you may know, the transition plans are due on January 31st. So we'll be working with you to support you up through that timeline. We're expecting that those will be reviewed between February, March, and April. Then institutions will be able to receive feedback and look at their program from that perspective. And then beginning with the academic year 23-24, all institutions will be expected to be implementing the updated standards. So check the PSD e-news tomorrow and submit any questions that you might have as we think about the technical assistance for next month. So one of the questions we received prior to this conference was a little bit of information about the examinations and the bilingual authorization. Currently, candidates have two pathways to earn the authorization. It's either complete a commission approved program, complete the CSET exams. Actually, there's a third. There's a combination of the exams and the program. And currently there are 3 exams for the bilingual authorization. There's an exam on culture, methodology. The third one is language competence, which also overlaps with the content exams for a single subject world language credential. So the language competence exam, those subject matter requirements were adopted back in 2004. And then when there were changes to the BCLAD bilingual authorization, the knowledge, skills, and abilities for the methodology and culture exams were adopted in 2007. And part of that effort was a collaboration of subject matter experts working together and members of the bilingual design team at that time when the bilingual authorization standards are being implemented and adopted at that time. So we do know that there's interest in future work on updating the language exams. At this time, we do not have a timeline for that, but we are aware of the interest. There was also a question about what that process might look like. But it's actually like a 20-step process. We have information of that in some past agenda items we'd be happy to share. But of course, it includes gathering experts from the field, developing subject matter requirements, putting those through bias reviews, developing the test items, making test guides, setting standard passing scores and those sorts of things. So if you'd like more information about that, we can certainly give you access to prior commission agenda items that outline that process.
Well, thank you, Miranda, for that, for addressing that aspect. One of the things that that has concerned the CAPTE members and bilingual teacher educators is the actual content and development of the methods and culture test. So, I mean, I'll just say personally, I did not get full clarity as to how those test items are developed, and some of them are considered problematic when it comes to how they depict culture or how updated they are. I would love to know how often are those items revised and what is the process to select the experts that are part of that committee? Because I don't know any. And I really, we've been around for a while, and we would really like to see a lot of the new bilingual authorization standards in terms of how culture and methodology is portrayed. That would require, I mean, I even took that test a while ago, and some of those items were like, they need to be thrown away.
Yeah. So the process starts with our subject matter requirements, which are based on the TK-12 student standards. And we're in the beginning part of updating all of our SMRs, because as I'll be talking about in a couple minutes, with AB 130 allowing programs to use coursework or candidates to use coursework to demonstrate their subject matter competence. One of the things that occurred to everyone early was that the SMRs are test requirements. They were not developed to assess whether or not coursework meets that. So we're going to be developing a process, or at least a way of creating the SMRs that will work both for the test specifications and for programs to evaluate transcripts. And the CSETs related to bilingual are on the top of our agenda. We've had that talk. Yes, we clearly understand that. But what we want to do is kind of get both of those things done at the same time.
Terrific. Thank you, David. CAPTE will be there to support when needed. Thank you.
We really need your help.
Thank you. We will.
So subject matter competence. So current status right now is what's in education code. So programs can use the following as demonstrations of subject matter competency. So for single subject credentials, a major in that area. For multiple subject credentials, a liberal studies major, or another degree that includes coursework in the content area pursuant to Education Code Section 44282B. So it lists 8 content areas that must be covered. And then for an education specialist, it can be either one of those. So successful completion of coursework currently that addresses each of the domains of the subject matter requirements adopted by the commission. There are no limits on what that coursework is. There's no grade minimum requirement. So we are going to be, or we have proposed regulations that will help identify some standards for that. So the commission approved these proposed regulations in June. And part of what we're doing is identifying additional majors that qualify as meeting subject matter competence in different credential areas, because we know that that's the easiest and fastest way to demonstrate competence. We're also going to require that coursework that's being used to meet the subject matter requirement domains be at least a grade of C or higher, or pass or credit, be credit bearing and usable toward earning an associate degree or higher, and be completed at a regionally accredited college or university. We also permit the use of upper division or graduate courses that exceed the subject matter of the subject matter domain if the course content requires that as a prerequisite. So kind of expanding what you can use for coursework. These regulations are not in effect yet. They are currently with the Office of Administrative Law. As soon as we get approval, you can believe that there will be a PSA coming out letting you know that you can start using these.
We have a question online.
Okay.
Program staff, faculty, et cetera, should not be taking assessments, correct? Isn't there a verification during registration to verify this? This is what I have shared when faculty asks me if they can take exams. Just want to make sure I am on target.
So the question is, can candidates still take exams, or?
Faculty, program staff, faculty, et cetera, should not be taking assessments, correct?
I don't know that we've said that. I mean, I can imagine that faculty will want to, some faculty would want to know what is on that assessment, if that's the question.
Yeah, I believe that's the question. Okay.
And the other thing is faculty who hold a credential may want to add a credential, an additional credential, and you can do that through, demonstrating subject matter competence and taking a methods course. We've got a question over here.
Well, 1 second. I'm going to bring you a mic so everyone online can hear you.
I just wanted to step back to your first bullet point there about identifying additional majors that will be accepted for various credentials. So are you taking input on that or gathering any information from the field, particularly related to education specialist? I can grant, or our institution can grant, subject matter competency for a candidate who has art or dance or theater that has nothing to do with teaching students with disabilities, but I can't grant it for psychology, social work, all of those fields that feed into a special education major credential emphasis. And so that's a real disconnect right now that's impacting us. We get a lot of candidates that come with that psychology as their undergraduate, which is inappropriate. Yes, if you're interested in that, you're interested in becoming an education specialist. So just want to get that feedback to the right people who are making those decisions.
So for these regulations, we did get, we saw a lot of feedback from the field. Unfortunately, what you're asking for is not allowed by education code. So in order to do that, we would need a change to state statute.
Okay. How do we provide feedback on that? Happy to do it.
To be honest with you, the best way to do that is to contact your local legislators and tell stories. Don't give them numbers, tell them stories. Tell them, give them examples of a couple different candidates who are amazing teachers, yet they have to go through additional hoops because their psychology degree is not an acceptable demonstration of subject matter competence.
I'm just going to jump in here just to put a plug for the conference in the spring. SPAN in Sacramento is all about policy. So this is a great thing. And the conference coordinators give time to connect with legislators and bring up these important issues. So I encourage everybody, if you have similar concerns that are at that level, to participate. Yeah.
Good idea. Thanks, Allison. So we have a proposal for all of you, and we'll be repeating this one this afternoon. But as we're looking at this process across campuses, we believe that home institutions are in the best place to determine whether or not a course or a major meets either one or more domains, or if it meets subject matter competence. So whichever institution has that course or major, they're the best ones to make that determination. So we would like to propose that each institution maintain a web page identifying the courses that they have identified as meeting one or more domains and the majors that meet subject matter competence. The commission would then have a link to all of the institutional websites. So someone could start with us, then, wherever their transcript is from, they could go look at that institution's page and see what has already been determined. And then institutions can determine whether or not they want to accept what the home institution is saying. It wouldn't be a requirement, but we've talked with a lot of different programs and staff, and no one really has the capacity right now to put together an online database with all this information. So if we can kind of distribute the work and have the experts, the people who offer these courses and programs, determine it, we think that that might be kind of the next best step in making it easier both for programs and for candidates to know which of their courses count. So don't need an answer right now, need you to think. Oh, we have a question back there.
The question was for online viewers, what about international students?
It's going to be more challenging with international students. I think we're probably still going to have to evaluate those individually, based on that credential analysis that we get. I think it's going to be more challenging to do that. Yes, Brad.
Okay, 1 second. I'll get to you.
Okay, so a follow-up to the international evaluations question. Is there a way to ask if they would be willing to provide this as a paid service, since they have staff that evaluate transcripts regularly? I understand they're looking at foreign transcripts, but could they do something specifically for the state of California around these domains and provide a paid service? So when we typically refer international students, but for some folks that might be limited, would that be something, I don't know who the appropriate person would be to pursue it, or if this would even be acceptable, but I'd love to see something like that as an option.
So in my experience with foreign credential analyses, it's really about finding the equivalent in the US. They're not looking so much at content as how many credits is this? Does this program equal a bachelor's degree? Because like in Germany, they really should count the last year of high school and with the 3 years of the bachelor's degree. They don't really look at the content. So I'm not sure that would be the best way to go, but I can ask our certification division if they have some suggestions on that. Question back there, Allison?
Thank you. Please, will you share your slides? There are very useful information in these slides. Please share it with us so that we can take them back home.
We will be sharing them, yes.
Thank you.
All right, and then the last section is on grants, and Kara is going to talk about the hundreds of millions of dollars available. And we don't get to keep it if we don't get it out. So please help us.
Good morning, friends, for 3 more minutes. I'm very happy to be here. I'm going to talk about integrated grant programs. Can we have a whoop whoop? Finally, we have some money for our amazing IET friends out there. So integrated program grants have come back, and they've come back in 2 ways. It's quite interesting legislation. It took me a long time to figure out what everything was saying, but I'm going to do my best to explain it to you all today. First of all, just keep in mind there's 20 million total for planning, expansion, and implementation of integrated programs. Okay. First, there's 250,000 for planning integrated programs. Let's say your institution, your program has no integrated view whatsoever. This is your opportunity to get on board, get your staff and faculty together, do some talking, do some recreating, blah, 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 do a lot of planning. 250,000 for that, okay? yesterday, our executive director said the RFAs are coming out next week, and they probably are. That's our goal. So we're doing our best. Number two, here comes the new part. We also have $500,000 for expanding and implementing the integrated programs. Both programs are designed to produce teachers in those designated shortage areas, the famous ones, special education, bilingual education, the ones we all need. It also adds technology and engineering, which we don't have a credential for that, but you know what they're talking about. This is legislation, right? It's the sciences, it's the mathematics, transitional kindergarten and kindergarten. And to establish those community college partnerships. In the first round, the 2016 round of integrated program grants, there was a push for those community college partners. This year, this time, it's really a push. Okay, we will be watching to make sure that what you say in the RFA is what you're actually doing. Okay, so if you're looking at the money, you think about it. I did a little math this morning. I'm not great with math. Yes, I run grants. If let's say it's 250 and 500 is 750,000. If you divide that into 20 million, it's give or take 26 grantees. But you know how the world works. Maybe 30 of you will do 250 and a couple of you will do the 5. It's all in the game. What I'm trying to say here is this is going to be a competitive grant. All right. Both grants, both RFAs, are going to come out at the same time. The RFA for planning at 250,000 and the RFA for expanding and implementing at the 500,000. And the key with the 500,000 is it's language in the legislation. It's spending the funds for the grant for any proper purpose for expanding and implementing. Yesterday, I think it was Dr. Sandy also referenced recruiting people into your program. What might that look like? Maybe it's more than a flyer on a wall in your hallways. Maybe it's a little something, something to really encourage our friends to come into integrated programs. Write us an excellent and robust and thoughtful application, and we will be happy to read them and to award $20 million to our friends in the field. And we must do this before June 2023. So they will be due, I think we're thinking February-ish. And, we're doing we're figuring all this out as we go. You will then have 2 years to liquidate your funds and run your program, but the money has to go out our door by June 30th, 2023. Because you're like, what? I have to do all? No, goes out our door. You guys spend. Tell us how it's going. Okay. All right. And I am done over 2 minutes, but I'll just say there's a lot of money. There's still money for teacher residency. There's still money for classified. There's still money for computer science. The newest grant opportunity is the reading and literacy supplemental authorization. So come see us at grant programs under the, when you go to like your accreditation site on the website, there's a space for grant programs. Come see us there. We have emails and we'll talk to you and we'll reach out to you as best we can. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Oh, David's back for that.
So this afternoon, we want to give you a quick preview of what we're going to be talking about this afternoon. We're going to be talking a lot about the new PK3 Early Childhood Education Specialist credential. And we've got our partners from the California Department of Education with us. We're going to be talking about ethnic studies, and we're going to be talking about the new reading and literacy standards and TPEs. So Heather talked about the literacy performance assessment. This afternoon will be about the actual standards and TPEs. And I know that we're over time. So if you have questions, we'll be here. Come talk to us, and thank you very much. We really appreciate your partnership.